All right, so get ready, because today we are diving deep into something really fascinating. Can we actually hack enlightenment? I mean, can we really use psilocybin, like what's in magic mushrooms, with meditation, and really just kind of accelerate that journey to this state that everybody wants to get to?
Well, it's a big question.
It is a big question.
And we've got some really interesting research papers and even a book full of personal stories that we're going to be looking at. So let's see what's out there. Let's see what we can find.
I love it. Okay, so what's really kind of interesting to me is that both the psychedelics and meditation, they both have a reputation for kind of shaking up that normal sense of self, right?
Yeah.
Like creating those, whoa, what is reality moments.
Yeah.
And some people believe that these experiences could actually be a key to unlocking something really profound about who we are.
Yeah, I think that there's something to that. I mean, both psychedelics and meditation, they both have the potential to disrupt that normal sense of self, and that can be a really powerful experience.
Okay, so before we get too far out there, let's lay some groundwork here. What exactly is happening in the brain when someone takes psilocybin?
Well, psilocybin, it interacts with a specific type of serotonin receptor in the brain, the serotonin 2A receptor. And when it does that, well, it's like hitting the shuffle button on your perception of reality.
Oh, wow. So it's more than just kind of tripping. It's really changing how our brains are processing information.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just psilocybin. Think of it as a whole family of compounds, each with its own personality. You've got LSD, mescaline, ayahuasca.
Right.
They all mess with your perception in slightly different ways.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, we have meditation. I get that it can lead to a feeling of calm and focus, but how does that tie into this whole altered consciousness thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is surprising, right? I mean, it seems like meditation's about calming the mind, not altering consciousness.
Right.
But meditation, especially mindfulness meditation, can actually quiet the monkey mind, that constant chatter that keeps us thinking about ourselves and our worries.
That is so true.
And scientists have actually noticed a decrease in activity in the default mode network of the brain, which is associated with that self-centered thinking.
So by quieting that internal noise, is meditation almost creating a blank canvas for a different kind of awareness?
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And what's even more fascinating is that both psychedelic experiences and certain types of meditation seem to affect similar parts of the brain.
Wow.
For example, they can both decrease activity in a region called the temporoparietal junction, which helps us understand where our body is in space.
Wait, so that could be why people have out-of-body experiences during both psychedelic trips and deep meditation sessions.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And it's not just the temporoparietal junction. There's also evidence that both psychedelics and meditation can cause a reduction in beta wave activity in the brain, which some researchers link to a feeling of selflessness or ego dissolution.
Hold on. Selflessness. Does that mean literally forgetting who you are?
Well, not quite.
Okay.
It's more about a shift in perspective, a loosening of the boundaries that normally define me versus everything else. It's like the walls between you and the world become a bit more porous.
And some people believe that this feeling of oneness is actually a core element of enlightenment.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that enlightenment itself is kind of a slippery concept.
Right.
Different traditions have different interpretations, so it's not like there's a single checklist you can tick off to achieve it. It's kind of like trying to define love. We all kind of have a sense of what it means,
Right.
but putting it into words can be a little tricky.
Absolutely. So how do we even begin to explore this connection between these altered states of consciousness and something as profound as enlightenment?
Well, one way is to look at what people experience during these states, specifically those mystical experiences that are often reported in both psychedelic and meditative contexts.
I've heard about these mystical experiences. They sound pretty mind-blowing, right? Like life-altering stuff.
Oh, yeah. They can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
William James, an early psychologist, actually came up with 4 key features of these experiences.
Oh, lay it on me. What are they?
Okay, so the first is ineffability. It means you literally can't describe the experience with words. It's beyond language.
Wow.
The second is a noetic quality,
Okay.
which is like suddenly gaining profound knowledge or insight, like a feeling of knowing something deep about reality.
So it's more than just a feeling. It's like a download of cosmic wisdom.
Yeah, kind of.
What are the other two?
Okay, the third is transiency.
Yeah.
Meaning the experience eventually fades. It's temporary.
Right.
And finally, there's passivity. a feeling of being swept away by a force greater than yourself, like surrendering to something bigger.
That's incredible. But if these experiences are so hard to describe, how can we even study them scientifically? It just seems so subjective.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? I mean, we rely a lot on people describing their experiences,
Right.
which can be tricky. How do you measure a feeling that's beyond words, right?
Sure,
But,
sure.
even though it's difficult to study objectively, the impact these experiences can have on people's lives, well, it suggests there's something really powerful going on.
Okay, so let's get into some real-life examples. Our source material includes this book called How to Change Your Mind, and it's got some pretty wild stories of people having these really profound shifts in perspective during psilocybin sessions.
Yeah, I mean, one story that really jumps out is Bob Jesse's. He described this experience where he felt like he was witnessing the birth of the universe.
Oh, wow.
Like he was part of that initial expansion.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And there's another one about Patrick Metz, who had this incredibly powerful encounter with love and acceptance that actually changed his whole perspective on death.
His fear just dissolved, and he was able to face his cancer diagnosis with this sense of peace. It's amazing how these experiences can completely reframe someone's relationship with something as profound as death, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's powerful stuff.
Totally. And then there's Tammy Burgess, who had this vision of what she called the great plane of consciousness, and it gave her so much comfort while dealing with her own cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, it's like these experiences, they offer a glimpse into this different dimension of reality.
Right.
One that provides solace and meaning even in the face of really tough challenges.
These stories are so powerful and inspiring, but it's important to remember that not everyone's going to have these life-changing positive experiences, right?
Absolutely. I mean, psychedelics are powerful tools, and they can be unpredictable. It's not like taking an aspirin. You can have challenging, even scary experiences.
Right.
Especially if you don't approach them with care and respect.
So set and setting are crucial, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
That means having the right mindset, going into the experience, and being in a safe and supportive environment.
Yeah, I mean, and having experienced guides or therapists, that can be invaluable, especially if things get intense or if someone needs help processing what they went through.
Okay, all of this is super fascinating, but before we get too carried away, we should probably address the elephant in the room, the legal and ethical considerations around psychedelics.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the legal status of psilocybin and other psychedelics varies wildly,
Right.
depending on where you are in the world. And it's crucial to be aware of the laws in your own jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And even beyond legality, there are important ethical questions, about access, equity, and the potential for exploitation that we need to grapple with.
For sure. So let's take a step back and summarize what we've learned so far.
Yeah.
It seems like there's some pretty compelling evidence that both psilocybin and meditation can alter our consciousness in ways that might resemble enlightenment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And those mystical experiences that people report, they're often characterized by the sense of unity, interconnectedness, and profound insight.
Right.
Which aligns with some descriptions of enlightenment, right?
But it's also important to remember that enlightenment itself is a pretty complex idea, and there's no one-size-fits-all definition.
Absolutely.
What it means to one person might be totally different for someone else.
Exactly. And while personal accounts can be incredibly inspiring, we need to remember that everyone's journey is unique. And not everyone will have the same experience. Plus, we need to be mindful of the potential risks and challenges associated with psychedelics, especially if they're used without proper preparation and support.
All right, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about a really interesting concept that came up in the research, predictive coding. Have you heard of this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's mind-bending stuff.
It is.
Basically, it's the idea that our brains aren't just passively taking in information from the world, but they're actively predicting what they're going to see.
Oh, wow.
Based on past experiences.
So our brains are like little fortune tellers, constantly making guesses about reality.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's all about efficiency. Our brains want to make sense of the world as quickly as possible, so they rely on these predictions to fill in the gaps.
Which makes you wonder how much of what we perceive as reality is actually just our brain's best guess.
Right. Some researchers even call it a controlled hallucination.
Wow.
A blend of sensory data and pre-existing beliefs.
Whoa. That's trippy. But how does this all connect to psychedelics and altered states of consciousness?
Well, some researchers believe that psychedelics might actually be disrupting this predictive coding process.
Oh, interesting.
They shake up those pre-existing models that our brains rely on,
Okay.
and they force us to see the world in a new light.
So it's like psychedelics are throwing a wrench in the machinery of our perceptions.
Exactly, yeah. And while this can be disorienting, it can also be incredibly liberating.
Right.
It allows us to step outside of our habitual ways of seeing and thinking to experience reality with a sense of fresh wonder and awe.
And that kind of shift in perspective, I mean, that could be really helpful for breaking free from negative thought patterns and limiting beliefs.
Absolutely. This is where the therapeutic potential of psychedelics really shines.
Yeah.
By disrupting our ingrained mental models, they can create space for new insights and more adaptive ways of being.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I'm curious, how can we as individuals integrate these mind-bending insights into our everyday lives? It's one thing to have a profound experience during a psychedelic session or a deep meditation, but how do we bring that wisdom back into the real world?
That's where the real work begins. It's about taking those insights and weaving them into the fabric of our everyday lives.
Okay.
This can involve things like mindfulness practices,
Right.
journaling, therapy,
Yeah.
creative expression, and even just, having open and honest conversations with people we trust.
So it's about finding ways to ground those transcendent experiences in the mundane, to bridge the gap between the extraordinary and the ordinary.
Exactly. And this process is ongoing, It's a continuous journey of self-discovery and growth.
Right.
It's about integrating those glimpses of something bigger into the messy, beautiful tapestry of our lives.
It's funny, we've been talking about these really, really big, profound ideas, but it all boils down to this question. What does this mean for you listening right now?
It's true. I mean, we can throw around terms like enlightenment and mystical experiences, but the real magic is how this stuff lands in your own life.
Exactly. So if someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, this is all super interesting, but where do I even start? What advice would you give them?
Well, first off, I'd say, don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You don't need to book a flight to Peru for an ayahuasca ceremony or become a Zen master overnight.
Right.
Start with what feels accessible and intriguing to you.
Okay.
So baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe explore different meditation techniques, read more about psychedelics,
Right.
or even just start paying more attention to those moments in your own life where your perception shifts a little bit.
Exactly. And remember, the exploration of consciousness is a lifelong journey.
Absolutely.
There's no finish line.
Yeah.
No right or wrong way to do it.
It's about curiosity, openness, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone.
And maybe a little bit of courage too, right?
Yeah.
It can be kind of intimidating to challenge your own perception of reality.
For sure, but that's where the real growth happens, when we're willing to question our assumptions and see the world with fresh eyes.
Okay, last question,
Oh.
and this is a big one. Do you think it's possible for anyone to achieve enlightenment, or is it reserved for like monks who meditate for hours every day?
Oh man, that's the $1,000,000 question. And honestly, I don't think there's a simple answer.
Okay.
What I will say is that these practices, psychedelics, meditation, mindfulness, they can definitely help us cultivate certain qualities that are often associated with enlightenment,
Okay.
like compassion, wisdom, and a deep sense of interconnectedness. So maybe it's not about achieving some ultimate state of perfection, but rather about continuously expanding our awareness and deepening our connection to ourselves and the world around us.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe along that path we'll stumble upon something that resembles what we've been calling enlightenment all along.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. We've covered so much ground today, from the science of psychedelics and meditation to the nature of consciousness and the elusive concept of enlightenment.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's a whole universe of knowledge and experience out there waiting to be explored.
So we encourage you to keep asking questions,
Yeah.
keep exploring, and keep an open mind. Who knows what you might discover.
Until next time, happy diving.